Sarah's worn-out sneakers squeaked softly against the linoleum floor of the diner as she hurried between tables, balancing a precarious stack of plates. Each step was a testament to her relentless work ethic, a quality that barely kept her afloat in the sea of bills that threatened to drown her. Rent was overdue, again. The electric company had sent a final notice. And the gnawing emptiness in her stomach was a constant reminder that her own meals were often sacrificed to make ends meet. Yet, despite her own struggles, Sarah possessed a heart as generous as her bank account was empty. She'd often slip extra biscuits to the elderly Mr. Henderson, knowing his pension barely covered his expenses. She'd quietly cover the tab for young families struggling to pay, telling the cashier it was on her. It wasn't that she was oblivious to her own precarious situation, but rather that she understood the weight of hardship and believed in the power of small acts of kindness. This inherent goodness, this unwavering empathy, was the defining characteristic that set Sarah apart, even in her quiet desperation. It was a beacon, waiting for the right moment to shine. The Blue Moon Diner wasn't much to look at. Its faded blue paint peeled in places, revealing patches of gray underneath, a testament to years of sun and neglect. The neon sign above the door flickered intermittently, sometimes spelling out Blue Moon Diner, adding to its quirky, slightly forlorn charm. Inside, the red vinyl booths were cracked and worn, bearing the imprints of countless customers who had come and gone. The checkered floor tiles were scuffed and stained, each imperfection telling a silent story. Despite its shabbiness, the Blue Moon Diner was a haven for the local community. It was a place where everyone knew your name, where the coffee was always hot and the conversation was always flowing. Construction workers started their day with a hearty breakfast, gossiping about the latest job site drama. Retirees gathered for their daily dose of coffee and companionship, reminiscing about the good old days. Truck drivers stopped in for a quick bite, fueling up for the long haul. Sarah knew them all, their orders, their stories, their joys, and their sorrows. The diner was more than just a place to eat. It was the heart of the neighborhood, a place where everyone belonged, a place where Sarah, despite her own troubles, felt a sense of connection and purpose. The bell above the diner door jingled, a sound that usually brought a smile to Sarah's face, but today, it only amplified the hum of the empty space. It was a particularly slow Tuesday, and the meager tips she'd collected so far barely covered the cost of her bus fare. The lunch rush had fizzled out hours ago, leaving only a handful of regulars nursing their coffees and reading newspapers. That's when he walked in. Unlike the usual clientele in their worn jeans and work boots, this man was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that seemed too expensive for the Blue Moon. His shoes gleamed, and his tie was a muted silk that whispered of wealth. He paused just inside the doorway, his eyes scanning the room with an air of quiet observation, almost as if he were studying a foreign landscape. He was an anomaly, a stark contrast to the diner's familiar, comfortable disarray. Sarah couldn't help but wonder what had brought someone like him to a place like this, on a day like today. He certainly stood out. As Sarah approached the stranger's table, she noticed the lines etched around his eyes, the subtle tremor in his hands as he reached for the menu. Despite his expensive clothes, there was an undeniable air of weariness about him, a deep-seated sadness that seemed to radiate from within. Her stomach rumbled, a familiar pang that had become almost a constant companion. She knew that the last plate of the diner's famous chicken pot pie was sitting in the warmer, her planned dinner for the evening, her only guaranteed meal until payday. But looking at the stranger, something tugged at her heart. He looked lost, vulnerable, and even more in need of nourishment than she was. The internal battle began. Logic screamed at her to think of herself, to hold on to the one thing she had. But her ingrained empathy, her unwavering belief in the power of kindness, whispered a different message. It was a choice between self-preservation and compassion, a struggle between her own immediate needs and the unspoken plea in the stranger's eyes. The aroma of the pot pie wafted from the kitchen, intensifying her hunger, but also fueling her resolve. "Can I get you something to drink?" Sarah asked, her voice betraying none of the inner turmoil she was experiencing. The stranger looked up, his eyes meeting hers for a brief, intense moment. "Just some water," Please, he replied, his voice raspy. As she poured the water, Sarah made her decision. Actually, she said, returning to the table, we just made a fresh batch of chicken pot pie, and it's the last one. I already ate earlier, so would you like it? It's on the house. She offered a smile, hoping it seemed genuine and not strained by hunger. The stranger's eyes widened slightly. Are you sure? I wouldn't want to take your meal. Sarah shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. Oh, it's no problem at all. I had a late lunch. Besides, she added with a playful wink, Mrs. Peterson makes the best pot pie in the county. You wouldn't want to miss out. It was a small lie, but it eased her conscience. It was a sacrifice, a silent offering born of empathy and a genuine desire to alleviate someone else's suffering, even at her own expense. The decision was made. The pot pie was his. A wave of emotion washed over the stranger's face, a complex mixture of gratitude and something akin to relief. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with sincerity. You have no idea how much this means to me. He accepted the plate of pot pie as Sarah placed it before him, the aroma filling the small space between them. As he ate, he and Sarah engaged in a quiet conversation. He didn't offer his name, nor did she ask. He spoke of feeling lost and disconnected, of searching for something he couldn't quite define. Sarah, in turn, spoke of the diner, of the people she served, and of the simple joys she found in her everyday life. Their exchange was brief, but meaningful, a connection forged in a moment of shared humanity. It was a conversation about life, about struggles, and about the small acts of kindness that could make all the difference. He ate slowly, savoring each bite, not just of the pot pie, but also of the unexpected connection he had found in this unassuming diner. When he finished the last bite of pot pie, a genuine smile graced the stranger's lips. That was truly delicious, he said. Thank you again. He rose from the booth, straightened his tie, and walked towards the cashier. Sarah watched him, a strange mix of satisfaction and lingering hunger swirling within her. He paid his bill, which was only for the water he had ordered, and then paused, placing a few crumpled dollar bills on the table as a tip. It was a meager amount, maybe $2 or $3, hardly enough to make a dent in Sarah's mounting financial woes. In fact, it was less than most customers usually left, especially considering she'd given him a free meal. But as he walked out the door, he turned back, offering her a knowing look and a small nod of acknowledgement. It was as if he understood the true value of her gesture, even if he couldn't express it in monetary terms. The bell above the door jingled again, and he was gone, leaving behind only the lingering scent of his expensive cologne and the seemingly insignificant tip. The rest of Sarah's shift passed in a blur of routine tasks. She cleared tables, refilled coffee cups, and chatted with the regulars, all while the gnawing hunger in her stomach grew more insistent. She resisted the urge to sneak a few fries from a discarded plate or to ask Mrs. Peterson for a scrap of leftover pie crust. She had made her choice, and she would stick to it. Despite the discomfort, a sense of quiet satisfaction settled over her. The stranger's grateful smile, the brief connection they had shared, resonated within her. It was a reminder that even in the midst of her own struggles, she had the power to make a positive impact on someone else's life. The $2 and change left on the table were insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but the feeling of having done something good, of having eased someone else's burden, was priceless. It was a small act of kindness in a world that often felt cold and indifferent, and that made all the difference. She was hungry, yes, but she was also strangely content. That contentment, however, proved to be short-lived. The very next morning, a thick envelope landed on Sarah's doorstep, a stark white rectangle against the worn welcome mat. It wasn't a bill, those were usually thinner, more aggressive in their appearance. This was something else, something ominous. Inside, she found a notice from the auto repair shop. Her ancient, sputtering car, her lifeline to work, had finally given up the ghost. The repairs were extensive, far beyond what she could afford. The estimate was astronomical, a sum that represented months of scrimping and saving, a sum she simply didn't have. Without her car, she couldn't get to work, and without work, she couldn't pay rent or buy food. It was a domino effect, a cascade of misfortune that threatened to crush her. The weight of it all settled on her shoulders, heavy and suffocating. The kindness she had shown the stranger the day before now seemed like a foolish extravagance, a luxury she couldn't afford. This unexpected crisis pushed her to the absolute brink, threatening to unravel the fragile threads of her already precarious existence. Hopelessness settled over Sarah like a shroud. She spent the day calling every possible resource, charities, loan agencies, even distant relatives she hadn't spoken to in years. Each call ended the same way, a polite but firm refusal, a reminder that she was just another struggling individual in a world overflowing with need. The thought of losing her apartment, of becoming homeless, filled her with dread. She briefly considered selling some of her few possessions, but they wouldn't fetch enough to even cover a fraction of the repair bill. Desperate, she even contemplated taking out a payday loan, knowing the exorbitant interest rates would likely trap her in a cycle of debt, but the alternative seemed even worse. The weight of her situation was crushing, the walls closing in. For the first time in her life, Sarah considered drastic measures, things she never thought she was capable of. The line between right and wrong blurred, and the thought of resorting to desperate acts to survive flickered in her mind, a dark and unsettling possibility. She felt utterly alone, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of her problems. Weeks turned into a blur of missed shifts, mounting debt, and dwindling hope. Sarah had managed to secure a few temporary jobs, but they barely covered the rent, let alone the car repairs. She was living on instant noodles and the occasional kindness of Mrs. Peterson, who slipped her leftover soup when the diner closed. The weight of her situation was a constant companion, a dark cloud that followed her everywhere. Then, one afternoon, just as she was starting her shift at the diner, a different kind of stranger walked in. This one wasn't impeccably dressed or exuding an air of quiet sadness. He was a man in a dark suit, carrying a briefcase, his demeanor professional and slightly intimidating. He approached the counter and addressed Mrs. Peterson. "I'm looking for Sarah Miller," he said, his voice formal and precise. "I'm a legal representative, and I need to speak with her urgently." Sarah, overhearing the conversation, felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. Was this about an unpaid bill? A summons? What could a lawyer possibly want with her? Sarah hesitantly identified herself, her heart pounding in her chest. The legal representative, Mr. Harding, led her to a quiet booth in the back of the diner, his expression unreadable. He opened his briefcase and produced a thick document, his movements precise and deliberate. "Ms. Miller," he began, his voice low and serious, "I'm here today to inform you of a rather unusual situation. A few weeks ago, a gentleman visited this diner. He was, unfortunately, recently deceased." Sarah's brow furrowed in confusion. What did this have to do with her? Mr. Harding continued, "This gentleman, Mr. Edward Thornton, remembered you. He remembered your kindness to him that day, your generosity in offering him your meal. It seems that act of compassion made a profound impact on him." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. "Mr. Thornton, before his passing, made provisions in his will to acknowledge your kindness. He left specific instructions for me to locate you." Flashback sequence begins. Edward Thornton sat in the back of a chauffeured limousine, his gaze fixed on the passing scenery. He was a titan of industry, a self-made millionaire, but lately, his life felt hollow, devoid of meaning. He had spent years chasing wealth and success, only to find himself empty and alone. His doctor had given him grim news, a terminal illness, with only a few months to live. That day, feeling particularly despondent, he had dismissed his driver and wandered aimlessly, eventually finding himself in the Blue Moon Diner. He was drawn to its unassuming charm, its authenticity. Sarah's kindness, her selfless offer of her only meal, had pierced through his despair. Back in the limousine, he had instructed his legal team to find her. "I want to reward her, not just for the meal, but for reminding me what truly matters," he had said, his voice firm. Find her, and ensure she never has to struggle again. She deserves it. He knew money couldn't buy happiness, but it could ease burdens, and he wanted to ease hers. It was a mission, a final act of purpose in a life that had often prioritized profit over people. Flashback sequence ends. Mr. Harding cleared his throat, breaking Sarah from her stunned silence. He opened the thick document and pointed to a specific clause. Ms. Miller, he said, Mr. Thornton bequeathed to you a sum of $1 million. The words hung in the air, impossible to comprehend. $1 million. It was an amount so vast, so unimaginable, that it felt like a cruel joke. Sarah stared at Mr. Harding, her mind reeling. She had given a stranger her last meal, and in return, he had left her a fortune. It was the kind of story you read in fairy tales, not something that happened to ordinary people like her. There must be some mistake, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't understand. Mr. Harding smiled, a rare and genuine expression that softened his stern features. There is no mistake, Ms. Miller. Mr. Thornton was very specific. He wanted to ensure that your kindness was rewarded in a way that would truly change your life. He handed her a copy of the will, the legal document, a tangible proof of the unbelievable truth. Sarah's mind struggled to process the information. Shock and disbelief washed over her, leaving her speechless and numb. She reread the clause in the will, her eyes tracing the words again and again, as if trying to decipher a hidden code. It was real. It was actually happening. The initial shock slowly gave way to a wave of overwhelming gratitude. Tears welled up in her eyes, blurring the already surreal document. She thought of Edward Thornton, the quiet, sad stranger who had been touched by her small act of kindness. She thought of her own struggles, the constant worry and the looming threat of poverty. Relief flooded her senses, washing away the despair that had consumed her for so long. The weight on her shoulders lifted, replaced by a lightness she hadn't felt in years. She could pay off her debts, repair her car, and finally breathe without the constant fear of financial ruin. It was a miracle, a twist of fate that had transformed her life in an instant. It was more than just money, it was a second chance, a new beginning. As the initial euphoria subsided, Sarah began to formulate a plan. The first order of business was to tackle her debts. The mountain of bills that had haunted her for so long would finally be vanquished. She envisioned writing checks to the electric company, the landlord, and the auto repair shop, each payment a symbolic act of liberation. Next, she wanted to secure her future. She would open a savings account, invest wisely, and ensure that she never had to face the same financial anxieties again. She dreamed of owning a small house, a place where she could feel safe and secure, a place she could call her own. She also considered furthering her education. She had always wanted to take college courses, to learn and grow beyond the confines of her current circumstances. With the inheritance, she could finally pursue her dreams, explore new possibilities, and unlock her full potential. The future stretched before her, bright and full of promise, a stark contrast to the bleakness she had known for so long. It was time to build a foundation of stability and security, a life free from the constant worry of making ends meet. But amidst her personal plans, a different thought began to take root. Sarah realized that she couldn't simply hoard the money for herself. Edward Thornton's gift was a testament to the power of kindness, and she felt compelled to pay it forward. She decided to use a significant portion of her inheritance to help others in her community, to ease the burdens of those who were struggling just as she had. Her first priority was the Blue Moon Diner. She approached Mrs. Peterson with an offer to invest in the business, to renovate the rundown building and give it a much-needed facelift. She wanted to create a brighter, more welcoming space for the community, a place where everyone could feel comfortable and valued. She also planned to establish a fund for the diner staff, providing them with better wages, health insurance, and opportunities for advancement. She knew firsthand the challenges they faced, the long hours and low pay, and she wanted to make their lives a little easier. Her act of kindness to the stranger had come back to her tenfold, and now she wanted to spread that good fortune to those around her. Sarah's life underwent a profound transformation. She was no longer just a struggling waitress, barely scraping by. She was a compassionate philanthropist, a beacon of hope in her community. She dedicated her time and resources to supporting local charities, funding scholarships for underprivileged students, and providing assistance to families in need. The Blue Moon Diner became a symbol of her generosity. The renovated building was a testament to her commitment to the community, and the diner staff thrived under her leadership. She created a supportive and empowering work environment, where everyone felt valued and respected. Sarah's transformation was not just about money, it was about purpose. She had found meaning in using her newfound wealth to make a positive impact on the world. She remained humble and grounded, never forgetting her roots or the struggles she had overcome. Her kindness, once a quiet act of compassion, had blossomed into a force for good, inspiring others to follow her example. She was a living testament to the power of empathy and the transformative potential of a single act of generosity. At Mr. Harding's suggestion, Sarah agreed to meet with Edward Thornton's family. She was apprehensive, unsure of what to expect. Would they resent her, a complete stranger, for inheriting a portion of their father's estate? To her surprise, the Thornton family welcomed her with open arms. They were a warm and compassionate group of people, deeply moved by Sarah's story and her commitment to using the inheritance for good. They shared stories about Edward, revealing a man who had always valued kindness and generosity, even amidst his relentless pursuit of success. Sarah learned that Edward had often struggled to connect with people, finding it difficult to trust and open up. Her simple act of kindness had broken through his defenses, reminding him of the importance of human connection. The Thornton family expressed their gratitude for Sarah's generosity, acknowledging that she had given their father a moment of peace and connection in his final days. They forged a bond based on shared values and mutual respect, a testament to the enduring power of kindness to bridge divides and create lasting connections. Sarah's life was irrevocably changed. She went from a struggling waitress, constantly battling financial hardship, to a compassionate philanthropist, making a real difference in the lives of others. The Blue Moon Diner thrived, becoming a symbol of hope and community spirit. She pursued her education, earning a degree in social work, further equipping her to serve those in need. Despite her newfound wealth and status, Sarah remained grounded, never forgetting the lessons she had learned from her past struggles. She continued to live a simple life, prioritizing kindness, compassion, and connection over material possessions. The memory of Edward Thornton, the sad stranger she had offered her last meal to, served as a constant reminder of the unexpected rewards of generosity. His gift had not only transformed her life but had also empowered her to transform the lives of countless others. Sarah's story became a local legend, a testament to the enduring power of kindness and the extraordinary impact of a single, selfless act. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, a little bit of compassion can change the world, one chicken pot pie at a time.